Why don't you do anything, you freaky flashing dog? Ladies, gentlemen, and harajam of all ages, the Druid is pretty much inarguably the most varied class when it comes to strong, effective builds and endgame content. Yes, there are of course only a couple of really top tier ones that are considered the actual meta for the class, but I can name a handful that are still super strong to the point that for any other class, they'd be the second strongest build that they have available. But Druid just has so many options. That said, at the end of the day, a hell of a lot of why this is a thing is because of how a singular unique and a couple of legendary aspects sort of work together, to the point that those are the staple of a lot of the strongest ones. This means that we have a fair amount of build variety, at least on the surface, but it is sort of unstable build variety. It's sort of a false choice, and we have a number of builds that could simply disappear with the snap of the dev's fingers if they nerf a singular legendary aspect too hard. With that as a consideration, let's talk about the upcoming Season 1, the patch that's right before it, and what I specifically want as a Druid main. Not things that affect the greater game as a whole, so much as just new things that could really make Druid specifically even more varied and actually fun as a class. To start off then, Druid needs a lot of early game love, especially as we head into the new season itself. Druid is pretty much inarguably the weakest class in the early leveling stage of the game, and they made some changes to that in 1.03 that should make this a touch nicer, but as a general statement, Druid is still not great for those early levels. The Malignant Heart system might do a bit to alleviate that, given that you can start getting these super early on as long as you finish the campaign, but everyone gets access to those, every class, so unless they specifically affect Druid in a more impactful way than I expect more than other classes, the early Druid experience is still probably going to be rough in comparison. Of course, buffing abilities for early Druid gameplay could well make things too strong in the endgame, but I'm sure the devs can work something out to fix this a little bit heading into the season. In relation to the things that I've just said about builds though, every ultimate ability that isn't Grizzly Rage needs some sort of notable buff, whether that be a more major mechanical change to the ultimate itself, or if it comes in the form of a new legendary aspect or unique that brings them on par. Right now, Grizzly Rage is just dominant, being a main focus of every current top tier build for the class that isn't centered around Nature's Fury. And I'm not upset about that conceptually. I don't want them to nerf Grizzly Rage, don't misunderstand me, don't get me wrong. I love where Grizzly Rage is for the builds that it makes sense to use it for, and that's part of what makes Druid able to do tier 100 Nightmare dungeons. I don't think it needs to be weaker, but I think the other ultimates deserve some love too. I think they need to be stronger. When was the last time you even thought about Lacerate, for example? It's awesome that there is this ability that just jumps around dealing high damage in werewolf form, but I don't think that there is a single werewolf build in the game, in existence, once you get past level 50, that will actually use Lacerate effectively. It just is not good enough. Cataclysm has niche uses, and Petrify has use in Nature's Fury builds, but even then, if you compare what those give to their builds in comparison to what Grizzly Rage can achieve, they just don't compete. So first and foremost, I think we need either mechanical changes or new legendaries or uniques that find a way to buff the power of Petrify, Cataclysm, and most importantly, Lacerate. Past that is human form builds. These simply need a buff.
I want to be treated like a human being!
Everything that is top tier for the Druid either focuses on keeping you in wolf form or keeping you in bear form, just constantly. Even the Tornado build, which is an inherently storm magic focused build and concept, while it's cool to have that, it just sort of feels weird to me that there are paragon glyphs and skills in the tree itself that boost the performance of human form, but just nowhere close to enough to make it viable to actually be in this form long term in the end game. As a result, I think the best way to fix this is either to give human form some sort of innate mechanical advantage, like increased spirit generation and reduced spirit spending, or to give it its own unique that gives you significant improvements when not in bear or wolf form, as currently it just feels like a wasted part of the class. And don't get me wrong, I think it is cool to walk around as a bear or as a wolf, but all of our character customization and our transmog only applies to human form. The fact that that rarely actually applies to a build is sort of really sad. Honestly, on a similar note, I sort of wish that there was some sort of transmog options for our bear or wolf form so we could actually customize them a bit, but more than that, I wish there was something that boosted human form in some meaningful way, even like an equivalent to Insatiable Fury for bear form or Mad Wolf's Glee for wolf form, but more meaningfully powerful, something that actually makes human form worth using. Aside from that, Earth builds and also companions just need some love in general. There are strong pure werewolf builds that focus around poison, there are strong pure bear builds that focus around pulverize, and there are a number of strong storm builds, even though they mostly require using Tempest Roar to make it a mixed wolf and storm playstyles. playstyle, but Earth itself as a focus is lagging behind a fair bit. The arguably strongest of these is Trample Slide, but it doesn't even really compare, and on top of that, it uses Nature's Fury, as well as the symbiotic aspect and some bear stuff, so it is hard to consider it a pure Earth build really, even though Landslide is the actual damage dealer. What I mean is stuff like Boulder. There is an extremely conceptually cool legendary aspect that turns Boulder into a core skill. It makes it do a load more damage and makes it cost Spirit instead of having a cooldown. But the problem is that there is just so little to actually boost Boulder and Earth skills in general that you cannot make Boulder the main focus of a build. You can turn it into a core skill in name, but not in actual usability, not in proper function, which is really disappointing to me because I love the potential of this. This could either be fixed with just buffs to Boulder in general, making the damage of it more meaningful, buffs to Earth skills as a whole, or even new legendaries or uniques that affect specifically Earth skills. The only danger with that second part is that this would obviously also impact Pulverize, which is already an incredibly powerful build. I guess this almost sort of goes back to what I was saying before about boosting human form in some way, as I could see a boosted human form build focused around Boulder working properly if they did it right, because right now a proper Boulder build is barely strong enough to take on equal level content. Hell, they could even add a legendary that does something like make Boulder explode after a certain number of hits, doing a big pop of area damage when this happens. Something like even the equivalent of what Gore's devastating grips are for Barbarian, where when Boulder ends, it pops for a portion of the damage that it did while it was rolling. That worked into a Boulder build could make a lot of difference, especially as that pop of damage would happen super fast in a densely packed room. The main issue with this skill though is the legendary aspect makes it cost 60 Spirit, which is an insane amount for an actual core skill. The damage reward for using it as a core skill is also just sort of incredibly low, especially in comparison to that cost. On a similar note is the Seismic Shift legendary that gives Earth Spike a cooldown and makes it come out in a line in front of you. This is actually extremely cool conceptually, but unless Earth Spike is the main part of your build, you cannot afford to put it on a two-handed weapon, which means the cooldown makes it unusable as a spammable skill, and then it just once again just sort of becomes unusable. If it isn't your main source of damage and it doesn't work as a basic skill anymore, then it has very little room to even be in a proper build when most Druid builds require a basic skill, require a core skill in some way, and then require at least one defensive skill and also an ultimate ability. As a whole, I just think that there should be some intrinsic buffs, either mechanically or numerically, to some of the more obscure Earth skills and or legendaries. Then we also need to talk about companion skills, of course, and companions as a whole, really.
I need some better friends.
Poison Creeper has some applications in later game builds, but this is mostly for things without Tempest Roar to give them a way to activate Envenom for the 30% crit damage multiplier, which is obviously nutty and really important to have. It is also used for the crit chance that you can get from one of the enhancements from the active itself. The damage that it does though is simply not enough to be used for that purpose itself, and then we have Wolves, which have been pretty much just completely dropped, and Ravens, which I haven't heard of anyone using past level 50, as the value just drops off way too hard. Part of the issue with this, for Wolves specifically at least, is that they simply die really fast in high-end content. They need to either make Wolf health scale with player defensives in some proper way, or make the Wolves have some sort of lifesteal at the very least, so that they can heal themselves, rather than just dying slowly over the course of an encounter. There is the Night Howler aspect of Legendary that makes Blood Howl apply to companions, but it shouldn't take an entire Legendary slot in our build just to give our companions a chance at surviving by giving them a heal occasionally, because if it does, that means that the companion system doesn't work correctly. Part of the issues with these skills stems back to the earlier points though about bear and wolf form. The strongest builds all focus around bear and wolf skills, or making other skills count as bear or wolf skills. Companions are not bear or wolf skills, even wolves, and they aren't either type of nature magic either, so you can't convert them through Vasili's Prayer, or through Tempest Roar, or through using Nature's Fury to actually take advantage of that. A big innate change that needs to happen is just pure tankiness as far as wolves go, but past that, I really think they should give the companions some sort of nature magic component. Make the ravens a storm skill, because they have sort of windy nature to them. Make the wolves a wolf skill. Make the poison creeper an earth skill, because it's basically just vines crawling around through the earth. Then they would interact correctly with more high-end builds, and could maybe even see some actual proper use within them. There are multiple legendaries that boost companion effectiveness, or boost general damage of you as a player depending on how many companions you have active. But even with all of that, and the Paragon glyphs that affect companions, they just aren't strong enough to be worth using in a proper build in endgame. So that simply needs to be looked at, in my opinion. And if they change the base functionality of companion skills and builds, it could even mean a much stronger early game experience too, which is a complaint I had earlier. Past that, I think there should be some sort of special unique that affects all companions to make a proper endgame build exist that focuses on using all of them, that actually benefits you doing so. Something like using any of the active companion abilities activates all of the active companion abilities without setting off their cooldowns. That would have a lot of actual potential. On a similar note, I want to talk about the Storm's companion unique. This is sort of just garbage currently, and that makes me really sad because the visual effect of making your wolves lightning is just really cool. It says that it gives the wolves the Storm Howl ability, but all that actually means in function is every 20 or 30 seconds while attacking enemies, they'll call down 4 to 5 bolts of lightning that don't really do particularly impressive damage at all. The wolves' lightning damage bites also don't proc any of the lightning damage based passives in the Druid skill tree, or the legendary aspects that you have that rely on lightning damage as well, because it doesn't count as being your own damage, they count as a separate instance of damage from a separate entity. That just makes the unique really quite bad, honestly. I think first up, this should make the wolves count as a storm skill when you have it equipped, letting it interact with things like Tempest Roar or the active interact with Nature's Fury, and then I think that they need to make their lightning damage actually interact with your passives as well, and also the legendary aspects too, to make this properly function. Make this an even considerable choice to use as a unique. Finally then, we have the concept of a mixed bear and wolf build, because right now this just doesn't really function at all. There is an entire key passive based around it, there are a couple of legendaries based around shapeshifting, and there is an entire unique, one of our 8 class-specific uniques, based around the idea of juggling kills between wolf form and bear form for different bonuses, but they simply don't actually work together well. The strong builds are really based on Earth Bear, Storm Wolf, or Nature's Fury. Everything in between has inherent issues, and I would love to see that fixed in general. Druid currently has the most things that you could consider viable builds in endgame, things that can complete nightmare dungeons at least 20 levels above you. But the thing is, you can really sum them up into only 2 categories. Grizzly Rage crit multiplier stacking through rampaging werebeasts, sometimes even using Direwolf to make this work for werewolves as well, or Nature's Fury with the symbiotic aspect and fast attacking basic skills. If it doesn't take advantage of one of those 2 major concepts, then it just will not be a strong Druid build currently. And I think that there is so much more potential for cool Druid builds in the things that we already have. So many unused legendary aspects, so many untouched abilities and passives in the skill tree, and of course the companion system itself is just, it could be so much better. So while it feels like a bit of a first world problem, of course, coming from the class with the most current build variety, yes, I think we should have quite a few more options than we already do. We should have a more enjoyable leveling experience. We should have more actual choice in our ultimate ability, and we should have a reason to use companions, and also a reason to consistently be in human form, rather than the current illusion of choice that we have, which is quite a lot of builds, but again, focused around only 2 actual inherent base concepts. Oh, and maybe please fix the Avian Wrath Spirit Boon. It is labeled as being a crit damage multiplier, but is in reality only additive, so it's just not worth using, which removes even more actual choice from our builds. So yeah, please fix that. I doubt anyone at Blizzard will actually watch this video, but this is essentially just my wish list of changes for the Druid come Season 1, or even beyond if these things aren't fixed by then. These are the things that I think need changing badly before I would really call the Druid a complete class. It's an incredible class. It is a ton of fun. I love it. It is my main, but the variety is a bit of an illusion, and I think the potential is there for just so much more that we cannot currently actually do in a viable way. What do you all think then? Do you agree with my thoughts and ideas for changes to the Druid? What would you have the devs change up to make the class better in your eyes, personally? Or do you like it just the way that it is right now? No matter what, I am really optimistic that the class will only become better with time, because I think that the foundation at its base is just extremely strong. I think there's a ton of awesome concepts behind the Druid that just need slightly better execution. Some of them just numerical boosts, and some of them some bit more mechanical changes. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.